January 7th, 1903, Volume 4. Jesus reproduces in Luisa the very sufferings he suffered in his humanity, and with the same power and effects. Continuing in my usual state, I was thinking, how is it possible? How can it be true that, because of a few sufferings of mine, the Lord would suspend chastisements and debilitate the human strengths, so that they may not start revolutions and form iniquitous laws? Besides, who am I to earn all this with a few sufferings? While I was thinking of this, blessed Jesus came and told me, "My daughter, neither you nor the one who directs you have comprehended your state. Indeed, in your state of sufferings you disappear completely, and I alone, not mystically, but in living flesh, reproduce the very sufferings which my humanity suffered. Was it perhaps not my sufferings that debilitated demons, enlightened blinded minds, and, in a word, formed the redemption of man? And if they could do this at that time in my humanity, can they perhaps not do it now in yours? If a king went to live in a little hovel, and from there he dispensed graces, help, and coins, he would continue his office of king. If anyone would not believe this, one would say that he is foolish. If that is a king, he can do good in the little hovel as much as in the palace. Or rather, one admires his goodness more because, king as he is, he does not disdain to live in little hovels and miserable huts. Such is your case." I comprehended all this with clarity, and I said, "My Lord, everything you say is fine, but the whole difficulty of my state is in the coming of the priest." And he, "My daughter, even if a king lived in little hovels, because of circumstances, necessity, and his very status of king, it is appropriate for ministers never to leave him alone, but to keep him company, serving him and obeying him in whatever he wants." I was left so convinced that I did not know what else to say. January 7th, 1921, Volume 12. The smile of Jesus when he will see the first fruits, the children of his will, living not in the human sphere, but in the divine sphere. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus came and surrounded my neck with his arm. Then he drew near my heart, and holding his breast between his hands, he pressed it to my heart, and rivulets of milk came out of it. He filled my heart with those rivulets of milk, and then he told me, "My daughter, do you see how much I love you? I wanted to fill all your heart with the milk of grace and of love, so everything you will say and do will be nothing other than the outpouring of the grace with which I filled you. You will do nothing. You will just place your volition at the mercy of my will, and I will do everything. You will be nothing but the sound of my voice, the bearer of my will, the destroyer of the virtues in a human manner, and the restorer of the virtues in a divine manner, which are founded on an eternal, immense, infinite point." Having said this, he disappeared. After a little while he came back, and I was feeling all annihilated, especially in thinking about certain things which it is not necessary here to say. My affliction was at its summit, and I said to myself, "How can this be? My Jesus, do not permit this. Maybe you want the will, but not the act of this sacrifice." And then, in the hard state in which I find myself, I aspire to nothing but heaven. And Jesus, coming out from my interior, burst into sob. I could hear that sob resound in heaven and on earth. But as he was about to stop sobbing, a smile arose which, just like the sob, reverberated in heaven and on earth. I remained enchanted, and my Jesus told me, "My beloved daughter, after the great sorrow which creatures are giving me in these sad times, to the extent of making me cry, and because this is the crying of a God, it resounds in heaven and on earth. A smile will take over which will fill heaven and earth with gladness. This smile will arise on my lips when I see the first fruits, the children of my will, living not in the human sphere, but in the divine sphere. I will see them all marked with the eternal, immense, infinite will. I will see that eternal point which has life only in heaven, flow upon earth and mold the souls with its infinite principles, with divine acting, with the multiplication of the acts within one single act. And just as creation came out from the Fiat, in the Fiat it will be fulfilled. Only the children of my volition will accomplish everything in the Fiat, and in my Fiat, which will have life in them, I will receive complete glory, love, reparation, thanksgiving, and praise for everything and for everyone. My daughter, things return there where they come from. Everything came out from the Fiat, and in the Fiat everything will return to me. They will be few, but in the Fiat they will give me everything. January 7th, 1930, Volume 27, Exchange of Gifts Between God and the Creature. How one who lives in the divine will is the divine bank upon earth and forms a nimbus of heaven. I was feeling all abandoned in the supreme Fiat, and I thought to myself, what could I give to my beloved Jesus? And he, immediately, your will. And I, my love, I gave it to you, and having given it, I believe I am no longer free to give it to you, because it is yours. And Jesus, my daughter, every time you would like to give me the gift of your will, I accept it as a new gift, because I leave the human will in its free willing, in such a way that the creature can be in the act of giving it to me always. And I accept it as many times for as many times as she gives it to me, because she sacrifices herself as many times for as many times as she gives me the gift of it. And in seeing that the creature is constant in giving me her continuous gift, I see that there is true decision on her part, and she loves and esteems the gift of my will. And I, just as she gives me the continuous gift of hers, give her the continuous gift of mine, and expanding her capacity, because the creature is incapable of taking the whole endlessness of my volition, I keep increasing continuously more sanctity, more love, more beauty, more light, and more knowledge of my divine will. So in the exchange we make, you of your will and I of mine, we double the gifts, and it remains bound so many times for as many times as we make the exchange of it. Therefore, I always have something to give you, and you too, because in my will things never end, they arise in every instant. And as you gave your will to me, at the contact with mine, yours has acquired the prerogative of mine, of being able to give itself continuously to your Jesus. Then I was following the acts of the divine will, accompanying them with my I love you, and I could comprehend the great difference in greatness and magnitude of the works of the divine Fiat and of my little I love you. Oh, how little I felt, and truly just newly born before that Fiat that can do everything and embraces everything. And my lovable Jesus, clasping me in his arms, told me, "My daughter, one who lives in my divine will is my rich bank upon earth, and as you say your I love you, I invest it with my own, and from little it becomes great. It diffuses in the infinite, in such a way that the riches of my love become immeasurable, and I deposit them in the bank of your soul. And as you continue your acts, I invest them with mine, and I deposit them in your bank so as to have my divine bank upon earth. Therefore your little acts done in my divine volition serve me in order to give me something to do, to make our divine qualities that are infinite flow in your little acts that are finite. Mix them together and make of them as many acts of ours, depositing them in the bank of your soul, so that our bank may find in you its heaven. Don't you know that one who must live in our divine Fiat must be a nimbus of heaven, such that as it lowers itself upon earth, but so much as to eliminate any distance, at that point of the earth where there is the fortunate creature, one must see heaven, not earth. Nor would my divine will be without its heaven. It itself would form it for itself, and the drapes of heaven would lower themselves to pay homage to that Fiat from which they recognize their existence. Therefore all the blessed remain stupefied in seeing a nimbus of heaven upon earth. But their stupefaction ceases immediately when they see that the divine will that forms their heaven and all their happiness is present as reigning in that creature, precisely at that point where they see that the drapes of heaven, lowering themselves, surround that creature to sing the praises of my supreme Fiat. Therefore, be attentive, my daughter, and if I tell you this, it is to let you know the great gift of making my will known to you, and how it wants to form its kingdom in you, so that you may thank me and be grateful. January 7th, 1932, Volume 30. The divine will can be wanted, commanded, operative, and completed. Example: the creation. My following the divine volition continues. I feel it always over me in the act of enclosing itself in my acts, in order to have the contentment of saying to me, "Your act is mine, because inside is my life that has formed it." It seems to me that with an invincible patience, but loving, sweet, lovable patience, that enraptures my poor soul, it watches, it enumerates when I should work, it moves the step, and other things, in order to enclose its operating life and move its step in mine, as if it wanted to imprison itself in my act, although it remains as immense as it is. But who can say what I experience and feel under the empire of the divine will? I am always the little ignorant one who hardly knows how to say the ABCs of the divine will. I lack the words in many things, and while my mind is full, and who knows how many things I would want to say, yet I try to speak, and I do not find the words in order to express myself, and therefore I continue on. So my sweet Jesus, surprising me, told me, "My daughter, my will has surprising and different ways of acting, and it acts according to the dispositions of the creatures. Many times it makes known what it wants. but it leaves the doing and the not doing at the disposition of creatures, and this is called wanted will. Other times, to the wanting will, it adds the commanding, and gives double graces in order to make the command followed. And this is for all Christians. Not doing it means to not even be Christians. Another way is operative. It descends in the act of the creature and works as if the act of the creature were its own, and therefore, as its act, it places there its life, its sanctity, its operative virtue. But in order to arrive at this, the soul must be accustomed to the wanted and commanded will. This prepares the void in the human act in order to receive the operating act of the divine fiat. But it does not stop. The operating act calls the completed act, and the completed act is the holiest, most powerful, most beautiful, most refulgent with light act that my divine will can do. And being a completed act of it, all that it has done becomes enclosed in this act in a way that one sees the sky, the sun, the stars, the sea, the celestial beatitudes, everything and everyone flow and enclosed in it. And I, as surprised, but how can it be that one single act can enclose everything? It seems incredible. And Jesus, what, incredible? Can my will perhaps not do everything and enclose everything, as much in the great as in the littlest act? You must know that in complete acts of my will, there enters the inseparability of everything that it has done and will do. Otherwise it would not be a single act, but would be subject to a succession of acts. That cannot be either in our divine being or in our will. And then the creation is a palpable example. All created things are inseparable among themselves, but distinct from one another. Look at the sky, complete act of the fiat. From up there it acts as footstool to the celestial fatherland, where all happinesses and joys flow, occupied by all the angels and saints, and we form our throne. This same sky forms the azure vault over the heads of creatures, and in the same space multitudes of stars are seen, but they do not extend themselves more than beyond the sky. Further down there is the sun, the wind, the air, the sea, but under that same space of the sky. And while each one does its office, so much is their inseparability that at the same time and place one feels and sees that the sun darts with its light, the wind whistles and casts its refreshing breaths, the air lets itself be breathed, the sea makes its murmur heard. It seems that they are fused together, so much is their inseparability, so much so that at the same time and place the creature can enjoy the sky, the sun, the wind, the sea, and the flowered earth. The complete acts of my divine will are not subject to separating. Because of the single will from which they came forth with the unitive strength and power. Therefore there is no wonder if in the complete acts that it does in the creature it encloses everything. And one sees oneself delineated as if one could see all of her works inside of a glass. While everything is at its place, yet they reflect with an admirable power in the completed act of my will and the act of the creature. And this is the reason that between a complete act of my will, as much within the creature as outside of her, is so much value, that for however much we give, we always remain giving, because she does not have the capacity of taking the whole value that it contains. It fills even to the brim. overflows outside, forms immense seas around her, and what has she taken? One can say very little, because this act encloses the infinite, and the creature is incapable of taking the value of an infinite act of my divine fiat. It would be easier that one would enclose all the light of the sun in the small round of his pupil, but that also is impossible. The eye can fill itself with light, but how many seas of light does there not remain outside of his pupil? Why? Because there is a divine fiat in that sun, in which it is not given to all pupils to enclose. They will take as much light as they want, but never exhaust it. They will always have something to take, true image of a complete act of my will in the creature. Therefore be attentive and let its life be in your acts. January 7th, 1938, Volume 35. One who lives in the divine volition forms the refuge for the life of the divine will. The I love you as refreshment for the divine love. How God feels obliged toward one who lives in his will. My poor mind was flowing in the divine volition, and I could see the anxiety, the desires, and the happiness it feels in seeing whether the creature wants to live together with it, to love it with its own love, and if she cannot do more than this, to enclose its anxiety and ardent sighs within her soul to say, I am here with you. I will never leave you alone. I will calm your anxiety of love and make you happy. But as I was thinking this, my dear Jesus, my sweet life, visiting my little soul with such great love, as if his adorable heart was ready to explode, told me, my dearest daughter, heaven, earth, and all the creatures are completely wrapped, as though enclosed within the intensity of our love. Our volition flows with such rapidity in every fiber, in every atom, in every instant, with such speed and fullness that nothing remains, not even a breath, that is not life of our will. Our love loves ardently, but with such ardor that it feels the need of someone to bring a little refreshment to the immensity of its love. Now do you want to know what can give relief to the intensity, totality, and fullness of our love? The I love you of the creature. And the more she says it, the more refreshments she brings to us. This I love you enters into our flames. It breaks them. It raises them. It soothes them. And as the sweetest refreshment, she says, I love you. I love you. You love because you want love, and I am here to love you. This I love you finds its way inside our intensity, forming its own little place, the little space in which to place its I love you. Therefore, the I love you of the creature is the support for ours, our refreshment, the quiet for our love, that it may rave too much. My daughter, to love not being loved is like trying to obstruct the course of our love, restraining it within ourselves, making us feel all the pain and the hardness of our unreturned love. So we go in search of one who loves us. Her I love you is so sweet and refreshing for us that who knows what we would give her to have it. See, then, how we find the refuge for our life in the one who lives in our will. We do nothing other than exchange our lives continuously. She gives us her life, and we give her ours. In this exchange of life, we find the one who can receive our life, giving us her own so we can give of ourselves and do whatever we want. We feel like God as we are. Therefore, living in our will serves us as a refuge, a theater for our works, refreshment for our love, and return for the entire creation. Since there is nothing we don't find in this creature, we love her so much that we feel obliged to give her whatever she wants. For each additional act she does in our will, she ties us more and adds more chains. And do you know what she gives to us to make us feel obliged? Our life, our works, our love, and our very will. Do you think this is trivial? Everything that she gives us is so exuberant that if it weren't for our power, which can give anything, we would lack the means to repay her. But our love, which never lets itself be won and surpassed by the love of the creature, goes in search of new devices, inventing new stratagems, to the extent of giving back our life many times, to fulfill its obligation towards its beloved creature. In its emphasis of love it says, "How happy I am that you live in my will. You are my joy and my happiness, so much so that I feel as if obliged to give you air to breathe, and feeling obliged, I breathe together with you. The sun brings you its light in my hands, but I don't leave you alone. I remain with you. Therefore there is nothing, water, fire, food, and all the rest, that I do not bring you with my own hands, because I feel obliged, and I want to remain with you to see how you take it. I want to do everything by myself. And if, as she takes, she tells me, I take everything in your will because I love you, I want to love you and glorify you with your own will. Oh, who can tell you then of the relief she gives me as she tries to repay me? And I let her. But I always come back with my love surprises. Therefore, please, make me happy by living always heart to heart and synchronized with my will, and we will be happy and joyful together, you and I. End of January 7th. Fiat.